group on top of the plateau were all lying tightly against each other, and the last on the windward side tried to cover himself with the tent. Two hikers of the group that started the descent decided to return to the group on top of the plateau. The remaining three descended successfully to the valley, but they found themselves in a trap. Chivruay Incident. Members of the Kuybyshev Aviation Institute. Mihail Kuznetsov, ski athlete, who was also the student of Law University.
Four of the group, Kuznetsov, Valentin, Lidiya, Ilya Altshuller, hikers with great experience, graduates. The rest are freshmen, but not newcomers to mountaineering. They knew each other, daily communication at the institute. Weekend training gave them emotional bond. They could feel each other, and one might say sense the mood of the soul. The routing commission under the chairmanship Benjamin said, the group was well prepared, the team was united, almost the whole group came to the defense of the route. Leader Mihail Kuznetsov has done this route 3 times, and his deputy, Valentin Zemlyanov, twice.
Start of the route. The KuAI group's journey began on January 24, 1973. The time of the tragedy was later calculated during the search to have occurred on the evening of January 26, around 8 p.m., lasting into the early hours of January 27, 1973. The group traveled by train, arriving at a linear railway junction at 9 a.m. on January 24th. From there, they took a bus to Revda, followed by a service bus to the Ilma mining settlement. The journey to Chivruay Pass was approximately 3 kilometers, with an elevation gain of 350 meters, 1,000 feet. After crossing the pass, they stopped for the night at the forest tree line near the Chivruay River. Carrying heavy backpacks, the first day must have been physically demanding for the group. 5 members, dressed warmly, left the camp to scout ahead. The remaining 5, expecting their return soon, spread out the tent and lay down on top of it. Due to strong winds, they were unable to pitch the tent. Strangely, they did not bring their backpacks closer or put on warmer clothing while waiting, even though they could have. Instead, they huddled together for warmth, with the last person on the windward side attempting to cover himself with the tent. 2 of the scouts decided to return to the group. Young Novosyolov gave all his warm clothes to his female companion and remained in only a checkered shirt. Meanwhile, Altshuller and his 2 comrades managed to descend safely into the valley but soon found themselves trapped. Without skis, they could not reach the village, and they lacked the strength to fight their way back against the wind. On January 25th, the group started late and traveled 8 kilometers along the shore of Sadazero Lake. To cross Chivruay Pass, they needed an entire day to trek 22 kilometers and ascend approximately 700 meters. By January 26th, temperatures in the Chivruay River Valley were slightly lower than the seasonal average, ranging from -15 degrees Celsius to -18 degrees Celsius. Although the group's leaders had prior experience in these mountains, the challenging terrain inside the valleys, horseshoe, may have posed difficulties. Lev Gugel, a worker at the Karnaserda mine in Ilma settlement at the time, was the last known person to see the KuAI group alive. He recalled that the hikers stopped at the canteen for hot tea, and during their conversation, they mentioned their plan to head toward Chivruay. Gugel warned them of an impending weather change, with a drop in temperature and strong winds expected to begin that night. January 25th also marked the end of the polar night, making it the shortest day of the year. The group had hoped to witness the Borealis. A memorial on Lidiya Martina's grave bears the haunting inscription, "I wanted to see the northern lights, but only saw a terrible death."
Strange decisions. If they saw signs of the weather getting worse, they should have stayed in the Chivruay and not climbed to the top of the plateau where the wind could be devastating. Days were short, the group was tired. There was no need to save food, they were not behind schedule. That same day, January 26th, the group started again around 2 p.m. and continued the ascent along the Chivruay Gorge. The wind was getting stronger. Lukoyanov's book says the group took the northern way to climb on top of the plateau. This statement was based on traces found on the top where the northern access point is. These so far unidentified traces look like the footprints in the Dyatlov case. They could as well have been left by the group after they encountered strong winds and tried to find a way down. The deadline of their return, January 31st, passed. The blizzard and strong wind prevented the landing of rescuers on the plateau of Chivruay. Discovery of the bodies. On January 27th, a message came about the death of the entire group of the Kuybyshev Aviation Institute on Chivruay. Residents of the village of Ilma said that on that day it was frosty, without wind. On February 27th, in the valley of Kuybyshev River, 2 bodies were found, 10 m from each other. Their watch stopped at about 5 o'clock. Only on June 1st, the last member, Altshuller, was found at the right slope of the gorge, 400 m from the place where the last 2 were found dead. He was warmly dressed, but without gloves. His watch stopped at 4:33. Zemlyanov's group that found the first bodies wrapped in the tent on the plateau noted they were seeing traces for 1 minute similar to footprints in Dyatlov case on the exit from the western spur. There were no other hikers groups on Chivruay Pass between the KuAI and MAI groups. It must have been dark when the group reached the top of the plateau. According to the meteorological station at Ilma mining settlement, the temperature that night dropped to -28 degrees Celsius and wind speeds reached 180 kilometers per hour. In such strong winds, experienced hikers would turn back, but they didn't. The group had covered about 16 to 18 kilometers, 10 to 11 miles, that day with elevations of 700 meters, 2,300 feet, when they were caught by the bad weather, and it became clear they couldn't go any further. The group split in 3. Mikhail remained with the weakest members of the group, for freshmen, and waited for the 2 groups that were sent out for a reconnaissance to return. Valentin, Artyom and Ilya Altshuller went to check to see whether descent to the Kuybyshev River is possible. Lidiya Martina, an experienced climber, went to explore the descent to Chivruay Pass with Alexander, and perhaps as an alternative route of going back to the Chivruay River. Their tracks were visible only at a short distance, in the direction of the Chivruay Pass. Those who stayed tried to take cover under the tent since strong winds prevented them from setting it up. They soon lost muscle tone and couldn't resist the cold, eventually succumbing to hypothermia. Mikhail froze holding the rope so the tent wouldn't get blown away. His frozen hand holding the rope was discovered first. The KuAI group had a checkpoint in Kirovsk on January 31st. Vladimir's explanation for the hasty decision to attempt the pass on their second day of the trek was based on the group leader's personal experience the year before. The weather was getting worse, which was noticeable compared to the previous day. The KuAI group didn't want to get stuck on the side of Lake Zero. If they had passed the western part of the Novosyolov tundra horseshoe, nothing could have kept them from reaching Kirovsk on time. Time of the tragedy was calculated during the search to be the evening of January 26th, around 8 p.m. to the small hours of January 27, 1973. Coincidentally, the day after the tragedy, a group of students from the Moscow Aviation Institute, MAI, took the same route. At the pass, they stumbled upon the bodies of Mikhail, Sergey, Yuri, Alexander, and Anatoly almost fully covered with snow. The hikers took pictures and found an ID among the belongings of the dead, which turned out to be Mikhail's. They reported the incident to the rescuers. This photo belongs to Viktor Zemlyanov, leader of the MAI group that found the tent and bodies on the plateau. The photo was taken just hours after the tragedy. The search operation was massive. Servicemen from the division combed the plateau with mine detectors. Unfortunately, no new findings were made in February. Footprints and a watch. During this period of the search, we conducted experiments that may be of interest when analyzing the case of Dyatlov group as well. In both cases, the wrist watches of all deceased stopped in a relatively short span of time, less than an hour of each other. We took several different types of watches and started hanging them in the wind or putting them on the roof of the cabin. But the watches kept going until they unwound to full stop at different times. Then Anatoly suggested putting them on ice. All watches stopped at about the same time with a span of 30 to 40 minutes. The total running time was around 2.5 hours. This observation allowed us to determine the approximate time of death of most of the KuAI group members. If I remember correctly, the time on the watches of the first 5 bodies was close to 1 o'clock. There is no way of telling if it's AM or PM. During the first, second, and third rounds of searches, a lot of footprints similar to those in the Dyatlov Pass incident were found. To find tracks with clear direction and a pattern in the movement of people is very unlikely. On the Chivruay Pass, 10 to 15 footprints located in different places were documented. The found bodies gave us no clue whatsoever as to what happened. We made many important observations of the terrain and weather. We tried different methods of search in small groups of 8 to 10 people. The amount of work was exhausting. 2 more KuAI members had already been found at the bottom of the gorge, on the right side of the Chivruay River. They were Valentin and Lekant. The clock on one of their wrists showed 4.33, presumably AM. In this search operation, there were 2 different teams. Yuri Krivov from the MI and the main hiking department of USSR trade unions, and the team of 6 from Kuybyshev. On June 1, 1973, a suspicious object was spotted directly below the spot where our cabin stood. We went down with mixed emotions, both relief at having found the last body and uncertainty about what we might uncover. When the previous 2 bodies, Lekant and Zemlyanov, were found, the search team called the investigator to the site and waited for 2 or 3 days. He noticed that city investigators were not able to accurately describe the place in terms of terrain forms and other landscape details. There is one interesting thing I want to mention. When Yuri Krivov was taking the items from the body and bagging them, he said something I remember clearly to this day. On his left hand there is a wrist watch, which shows the time of 6 hours 5 minutes and 16 seconds. What? It's still going! The only part one I'm not sure is the make of the watch and the seconds. The important thing was that the watch was still working after being removed from the frozen body. It is known that they were not all found at once. 5 hikers were discovered in February, 2 more in March, another 2 in May, and the last body was recovered in June. The investigation ended quickly enough. Hypothermia was ruled as the official cause of death, although there are still a lot of mysteries in this case. The case is still classified. Theories about their death. The faces of the deceased were frozen in masks of horror, giving rise to various theories about their deaths. Some speculated that the hikers might have encountered Bigfoot, while others recalled folk tales warning that one could lose their mind in this place. There were even claims that they had fallen victim to a shamanic attack, as some locals believe. Vladimir, a researcher of 20th century mysteries, suggested in a studio interview that the hikers' deaths could have been caused by radiation chemical exposure. He stated, "That's why they were buried in closed coffins. Their eyeballs were missing because the radiation simply burned them out." The only person who refused to believe the official version and sought to uncover the true cause of the students' deaths was Victor, the cousin of one of the victims. The program team planned an expedition with him to Chivruay Pass, but just 2 weeks before its departure, Victor was brutally murdered. He was planning to go to the pass with Andrei Malakov's film crew. However, 2 weeks before the expedition, Victor was murdered in Nizhny Novgorod. For the local population, Chivruay Pass is considered a sacred place, known for occasional mystical occurrences. There have even been reports of travelers experiencing sudden mental disorientation. The entire story bears a striking resemblance to another mysterious tragedy, the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Julia Vopseva, who was born on the Kola Peninsula, believes that the valley near the rock is cursed. In 1965, 4 hikers died there under mysterious circumstances, and the cause of their deaths was never determined. Vopseva studied archival documents and discovered that in 1937, Adolf Hitler sent an organization to this region to investigate mystical phenomena. What did the Andrei broadcast crew discover at the scene of the tragedy? Is there any connection between the investigation of Viktor Voroshilov and his murder? If hypothermia was truly the cause of the hikers' deaths, why is this case still classified? Similarity between Dyatlov Pass and Chivruay Incident. There are many similarities between the incidents. The division of the group, deaths caused by freezing, first as a group and then one by one while descending the slope, along with exposure to similar conditions while being underdressed. Both the Chivruay and Dyatlov groups were criticized for making a hasty and inappropriate decision regarding the timing of their ascent. In terms of the duration and complexity of the search operations, as well as the number of victims, 10 in total, the Chivruay tragedy surpassed the Dyatlov Pass incident near Dead Mountain. Additionally, while the hikers' behavioral mistakes were noted in the Northern Urals in 1959, their deaths were attributed to various alternative theories, including military experiments, UFO encounters, and even a confrontation with the Yeti. Supporters of these mystical explanations often cite the concealment of search materials and the alleged involvement of the KGB in the investigation as evidence. The darkening of the skin observed in the victims of the Northern Urals incident was identical to that of those who perished in the Chivruay tragedy. On January 27, 1973, no nuclear tests were conducted. However, on that day, an attempt was made to disperse a cyclone using a meteor rocket in an effort to weaken the extreme cold it had brought. Another similarity lies in the fact that the search for the missing hikers was carried out by the military services of Kurovsk. Additionally, the authorities expressed their condolences to the victims' families, and the parents of Mikhail and Sasha were not permitted to conduct a private investigation into the incident. All of the victims, except for Sergey, are buried at the Rebeznoye Cemetery in Kuybyshev, where both a group monument and individual headstones have been erected in their memory. Additionally, a memorial plaque has been placed at Chivruay Pass. And the Chivruay Pass tragedy remains one of the most haunting and enigmatic incidents in the history of mountaineering disasters. Decades later, questions still linger, and theories continue to emerge, ranging from harsh weather conditions and human error to more sinister possibilities involving military experiments, mystical forces, or even classified government operations.